Do you have any regrets about yesterday?
Worthless subhuman fucking boat anchors dragging me to the bottom of their... Put yourself in a world where you can never ever talk about growing negative trends because you're just like irresponsibly platforming or giving attention to something. We don't ever talk about this now because we can't platform any of the other speakers. We can barely contend with the ideas because a lot of these guys don't even know what the ideas are because they're like, they make these horrible caricatures or straw men. Honest to God, one of the most impressive things that I can do in other people's eyes when I'm having debates with some of these red pillars, a lot of these people are shocked that I even understand their point of view.
Not talking about it led to these movements being created. And then they also want you to not talk about it now that these issues are in the mainstream.
Yeah.
Because then it grows it. And then they expect anything to change. It's like, bruv, the way we got to this point was not talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
The way that these movements even got big was not talking about it. And now that it's big, you're like, let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
The whole way that podcast started was funny. I thought Andrew Tate was trying to reach out to Sneako, and Sneako was missing out. So I hit him up. I'm like, yo, your chat's saying to call Tate.
Oh, no.
So I fell for the bait.
Yeah.
I trusted.
There's also a really common one if you ever start streaming where people are like, hey, call Destiny, he's crying, or call X, they're crying. That's another one. People just make shit up, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I didn't know. So then he tried to call him, and dude was sleeping. He was like, don't call me when I'm sleeping. So I felt bad. So he's like, but you have to come on now. So I agreed to. And then everything just kind of evolved from there. I thought I was just speaking with Sneako and Jadion, and then Nick Fuentes just showed up, and then he just started going off about race realism. I'm like, I don't know anything about the literature. I have no idea about none of it. So he just started rambling, and I'm sitting there awkwardly like, I don't know counter any of these points because I don't know what the fuck he's talking.
Mm-hmm. Do you
So I think it optically looked worse than it was.
Sure. Do you how do you reach out to people? Do you ever feel bad when you reach out to people that you're leechy?
What do you mean?
Like, there's a lot of conversations that I'm listening to. So like when Nick popped up on that one yesterday, and I heard him starting to ramble off the like the fucking racial shit, I started getting triggered as fuck. Because I knew that there was like not gonna be like an adequate like counter, and he was just gonna be like preaching to Sneako's audience of like 20,000 people, and he's just like getting a free pass and everything. And I want to message Sneako, be like, bro, you gotta let me on. But then it feels like I'm like begging, so like, please let me come on, and I want like your viewership, right? It always feels like really weird. I can never balance that.
I think some people might perceive it that way. You just have to know, like with me, it won't. So I think you just have to know the people that you're asking if you're really worried about.
Yeah, it'll never feel that way to me either, Steve. Don't worry.
Shut up, Dan.
I understand that you're not after the clout. Not like that.
I think we all have that natural inclination. Like there's been times where like a creator did something I really liked, and I want to reach out, just say, hey, I really appreciate that. But I didn't want to seem like I was like, yo, on some shit where I'm like, let me be friends, because I don't want to be friends like that. So I think we all have a little bit of that insecurity where we don't want to perceive like we're there for the wrong reasons. But I think it really just comes down to how well do you know these people, and what is your intention going in. If you feel like it's more important for you to talk about these issues than it is to be accidentally perceived that way, then I would still go through with it. But if you know the people pretty well, just have that conversation beforehand. Like, yo, listen, if you're talking to someone crazy, I might hit you up to jump on. And then there's no reason for them to look at you crazy unless you do something to the contrary.
Yeah, sure, maybe.
Yeah, so if you know Sneako has crazy guests on every now and then, you might want to jump on. Just hit him up like, yo, listen, if you're ever talking to someone that's crazy, I might want to jump on and ask you for it. Was that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's more than fair.
Yeah. If you would have hit me up and said, yo, I'm trying to jump on right now, cool. I would have just asked Sneako if it's fine, then I would have told you to. I'm glad you did, to be honest with you. Because he was just going off, gish galloping, talking about this whole thing. And I was hitting Jadion, I'm like, bro, do you know anything about this?
Yeah, and it's like, fuck. And he's like, given the opportunity to ramble, like he has a worldview put together that like if you let him talk about it long enough, it's gonna sound pretty appealing. Like it sounds like he's got it all figured out, and he seems like he's a pretty funny dude, pretty charismatic, you know.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to do is start screaming and yelling and be like, oh, I feel some type of way, but I have nothing.
Yeah, and you look unhinged. Crazy. Yeah, and then if you're wrong on anything, now you look like you just have a vendetta against him, and it's like really rough, yeah.
Right. But at the same time, I also look fucking stupid because I'm just sitting here while some white
you're lit in a panel with like 3 black people.
Yeah. And we're just sitting here quietly like, So I don't know what to do in this moment because first off, that's what really cheesed me. Is I wasn't aware this was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to throw in some random person like that, I really don't have an issue. But when they got like crazy unhinged views and you don't tell the others, it's not that I'm afraid of being on that kind of panel. It's like if I'm unprepared, I look stupid for being there because it just sounds like I'm chilling while this person's saying Oh yeah, black people have lower.
They're just kind of stupid. Yeah, you know,
Like
It's
everybody
part of the black brain.
Inference. Yeah.
Jesus.
And so I guess he's upset with how you were representing a lot what he was saying.
Who, Nick or Sneako?
Nick. Oh, who was going on the rant?
Oh, Nick is, yeah. Well, because usually if I have Nick on a one-on-one environment, I'll be like more kind of like friendly and personable. Just because I think I reach his audience better. But if he's like preaching to other platforms, well, now I have to start like staking out way harder positions. Like if he's talking to me one-on-one and he wants to talk that culture shit, I'll explore it with him because it's my audience and I control my audience and I'm fine with that. But if he's on some other shit, like on like Sneako's panel or talking to Gideon or the Don guy or anybody else, well, now I want him to be like, let's be clear. When you say culture, you're talking about motherfucker's skull size, okay? You're on some biological race realism shit. Let's be clear what you're talking about. Because I don't want a whole bunch of people listening to be like, oh yeah, like this sounds base. Like I think everybody should have like the same culture. And it's like, he doesn't mean the same culture, my dude. He means the same skin color, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that distinction is important because, I don't know, me listening to him is interesting because he was referencing stuff I hadn't read up on, so I couldn't really counter him on that. But some of the other stuff he said, where he claimed like his faith was his most important identity process, but that he wouldn't prioritize his religion when choosing a partner.
Yeah, that was a really good question. Yeah. Was that you too?
Yeah, that's the one, because he was telling me like he was very religious. I was like, which one do you identify more with? And then he said religion. I was like, cool. So then why would you just marry a black woman who's religious over like a white woman who's not? And then he started stuttering and pausing. I'm like, okay, well, that means your priorities aren't what you claim they are.
Exactly, yeah.
And I wish they would just do that more often. Just say like, yeah, for me, whiteness is more important, because then I wouldn't have an issue. We know where you stand. But it's the trying to play both sides whilst also saying some shit that's clearly fucked up that interests me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because then the positions sound pretty reasonable. Like I want to marry somebody that shares my like core values. That's a fair point. I think everybody feels that way. But when I say core values, I mean my most important value is skin color. It's like, okay, well now we're on some different shit. Now it's a little yeah.
Right. And it was also fascinating how Sneako was like really on top of all of it and like, you know, being supportive, because I think even Sneako at some points had to like walk some stuff back and be like, you know, maybe this worldview is not the best for my existence.
Sure.
But that was interesting watching Sneako be so enamored with him.
I think it's I've said this before, but it's that anti-establishment shit is so attractive. Like if you can preach some shit about how like the system is fucked and everybody's a bot or whatever, like you can say almost anything after that, and like the other anti-establishment types will just like soy out and be like, oh yeah, bro, of course, 100%.
Okay, maybe this doesn't make sense. I was trying to think about it in my head. But isn't that kind of indicative of the fact that despite being so different, even having worldviews where like one would lead the other person to not exist, you find such common ground with someone who shares your perspective over your race that you're like even willing to entertain that? Is what I'm saying?
What is the question? Is that like an indictment of your worldview, or?
Because, you know, if you're coming from an angle where you're like against multiculturalism and all this other stuff, isn't it kind of interesting that these two people were able to connect so strongly on their anti-establishment views, even beyond the fact that like one wants the other one to not exist anymore?
Oh, no, I think there's some truth to the, people meme about it online, but there's some truth to the idea that like, fuck, I tweeted a video the other day where it's like, racists are awesome. Like, as long as you're racist, they'll accept you no matter what race you are. Because it was like some like black nationalists and white nationalists like walking off somewhere, and the guy's like, why do you even like this dude? It's like, oh, he's racist just like me or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Like, unironically, like some of these groups are like pretty inclusive, which is funny. Or they make like a lot of bullshit reasons for like why it's okay that like, you know, swarthy Spaniards are allowed in their movement, or Hispanic people are allowed as long as they're white enough or whatever. So
yeah, I mean, hatred is hatred. I'm sure they can understand each other. That's beautiful in its own way.
Yeah, I'd be careful. I wouldn't say hatred. I think it's, you really just want to belong to like a group or a club. And yeah, I mean, racism plays out as hatred a lot, but I think it's important that like, it's a little bit different, because I don't think it stems from hatred. I think it stems from like not belonging and like kind of looking for a group. Yeah. I mean, it's racism, I guess. Like, as a white person, I can be a little bit more detached from it than you can because I'm not affected as much. So, yeah. But yeah, I think that, I think it's more like people just want to belong somewhere, and racism is a really easy way to get people to buy into it.
Do you have any regrets about yesterday?
I feel like I did about as well as I could have. It was a really, really, really difficult conversation, because I have to skirt the line between, I think one, everybody, especially minorities, I'll say instead of black people, but we've talked about this before, that like black people are automatically kind of predisposed to kind of like not trust the system for a variety of reasons. So when I'm stepping into an environment where you've got one guy that is like selling that anti-establishment narrative, and he's also like pretty funny and he's telling jokes and shit, to push back on him, I have to do it in a way that is like, I'm pushing back substantively on everything he's saying, but I can't come off as like a screechy Redditor. Like I don't want to come in like soying the fuck out, and then everybody's like, well, Nick was like chill, he's just like chatting with us, and now you've like turned it into a screaming match. So yeah, I don't know. So it's a really, really difficult needle to thread.
Yeah, I think generally a softer approach is going to work with most kind of situations.
For sure. Although in that circumstance, he's on so much wild shit. I'm like, bro, this guy's literally saying like, you know how black people beat their girlfriends? Like, oh, we gotta chill,
right.
dude. Yeah.
Right. That shit fascinated the shit out of me. But I think what works really well for Nick is like, even though he can be very sneaky with some of the stuff that he says, or a little bit slippery with some of the takes, like, you know, the one with the religion and marrying a black woman or whatever. Mm-hmm. He is quite charismatic, and he does appear to be willing to say the off-the-cuff stuff, kind of in the same vibe as Trump, that it makes him endearing to some degree.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, because when people are willing to also openly say stuff that's like really ass backwards and say it with a smile and say like, it's hard to describe charisma to people, but he does have that form. Mm-hmm. And so it can make him seem more trustworthy than he actually is. So even though he's telling you literally like, I don't want your people to exist anymore, like, because of how he says it, it makes it more palatable, which is fucked up to think about, but it is true. And I think good politicians have that ability.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of people, because I had to stress this a little bit early on. People say some shit like, I really appreciate Trump because he's honest. I was like, okay, well, hold on, okay? Just because somebody's being honest doesn't make them good. It just makes them honest. It's good to be honest, but that doesn't make the message good, right? Like I can tell you to your face, like, I really want to kill you because you're a homosexual. And like, it's cool that I'm honest, but that doesn't make the message good, okay? We have to be able to evaluate whatever's coming past the honesty. And people seem like they lose track of that sometimes, where, well, as long as they're being straightforward, they're being a truth sayer, you know, I could definitely get on board with what those guys saying. It's like, all right.
Yeah, I think the issue becomes, I think folks have gotten so used to hearing politicians speak and the way that they kind of dodge and weave a lot of difficult questions and, you know, kind of give a lot of lip service, that when they hear someone just be candid in a political context, it is refreshing. That's why, even though I can fully acknowledge he's absolutely a racist part, and if his views were to come to pass, I'd be extremely against it. I could still have a laugh and enjoy some of it because I'm like, it is refreshing.
For sure it is. It's just scary. It's just scary the idea of like being able to take over like a really big audience, because Nick has initially he kind of hitched himself on me because I was one of the only people willing to kind of like hear him out, because I'll listen anyway now, and I like the arguments. He's a smart guy, so it's like challenging, and I appreciate that. Yeah. But now he's like very clearly, he sees like Sneako's audience. I don't think if my audience gets converted to Nazis, then you know what, go for it. Like I'm a dumb fuck, and I deserve it if that happens, and they deserve it, fuck them. But Sneako's audience, I think, is way more primed for that kind of stuff, because he's not like a hardcore debater kid or anything like that. So I think they're a little bit warmer, amenable to that type of rhetoric. So I just have to be, that's just something that I have to keep in mind, I guess. When I see Nick like jumping on Sneako shit over and over and over again, it's like, fuck, imagine he grows like a huge audience off the back of Sneako's stuff. That would be really, really, really bad.
I mean, I think that's inevitable. The way that the Red Pill movement kind of functions, their views really do a lot of his and those.
Sure, a little bit, yeah.
Well, not just a little bit. I think most Red people will, you know, profess their love for religion and conservative values. This whole kind of like, you know, appealing to, you know, what the parents want. And so when he talks about one mono-ethnic or mono-cultural society and one group of people in power, like that's the way a lot of these Red Pillers would see society. The
only reason I say a little bit is because like I think yesterday Nick fucked up in going a little bit too hard. Normally he's more tactful. He was really bad on the race stuff. Like there were a couple of things where he either should have just lied or been more tactful. Like that thing about like, if I have a black roommate, we're probably gonna fight over the shower more. Why would you even say that? Like you don't need to say that to maintain your audience. That was so stupid.
I think he was trying to find a good example to be able to still make his point palatable. I think he fucked up on.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I just that, or I don't know. Maybe black people didn't take it the same way. That sounded wild to me. The idea that like if I had a black roommate, we're gonna be fighting over shit more just because he's black. Like even if I was racist, I don't think I would ever say that. But
I agree, but I really think that their desire to have conservative values trumps any kind of racist stuff that he would say.
Oh, maybe.
I wouldn't be surprised if I
you're saying
saw
there are like certain minorities that are like, you know what, dude, he's conservative. Yeah, he's racist, but at least we connect on this. You think they'd be like chill with it?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
That's possible.
Absolutely. Most of the views that I've seen within like the red pill sphere track really well along with the conservative party.
Sure.
Their love of cops, their anti-establishment views, their
the Trump worship,
and these views in a vacuum are not wrong. Like I agree on, like for example, the Second Amendment. I think people's right to bear arms. Like I'm cool with some of the ideas that they have, but what I'm trying to say is it tracks perfectly along. And so I wouldn't be surprised if I saw Nick go on like a bunch of red pill podcasts. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. In fact, I am very confident that through his connection with Sneako, I can see this guy meeting with a lot of people within the red pill sphere. You can't see it?
Wait, fuck, say that last thing again. I'm sorry. I just got super triggered. My bad. Just repeat just that last sentence.
I was just saying that I could see Nick Fuentes going on a bunch of these red
Oh, yes. Yeah, the only thing, the biggest inhibitor, God, I hate, do you know who FD signifier is?
Sure, yeah, I know.
God, I hate that fucking loser fuck piece of shit. Fuck, I hate him so much. Sorry.
Whoa, what happened?
Him and Noah Sampson, two fucking loser video essayist, racist fucking pieces of shit. I fucking tweeted. I opened it. I shouldn't have it. Now I'm off. Now I'm triggered. Sorry. Okay.
No, pull it up. I mean,
no. Hold on. Responding to your point. I'm sorry, because you bring up a good point, and that there is like a lot of overlap between like the conservatives and kind of like the red pillars and like the neo-Nazis. The only thing I think that would keep them from going there is that because these guys aren't like good representatives of like red pill stuff. Like if Nick is admittedly like an incel and shit, I don't know if Nick Tate's audience or like a Fresh and Fit audience, or not Nick Tate, I'm sorry, Andrew Tate or like a Fresh and Fit audience is going to be looking at like these people as role models. You know, that might be the one thing that keeps them out. But
oh no, I vehemently disagree.
You think?
In fact, I've seen Tate do podcasts with like Muslim scholars or Christian scholars, and they ate all that shit up.
Well, I guess if they're only there to talk about like that particular thing, maybe yeah. Like if they're only talking about politics and not like dating or anything like that, sure.
I could definitely see them overlapping. They would eat that shit up. I mean, just the mere fact that these guys constantly reference religion and religious leaders and stuff like that, like they're gonna go right down that rabbit hole. But yeah, you want to talk about this tweet that you saw that pissed you off? Because I think what happened?
Hold on. I don't even need to respond to these fucking losers. I just realized I'm done with these guys and I need to be done. Okay. It's just, people always get mad about the platforming argument. So basically, I think Noah Sampson was tweeting out like, oh, like just chatting with my Nazi friends, all having fun and blah, blah, blah. Because he's one of those people that think that you should never platform an opposing view ever, that they need to be banned from the internet, thrown into the guillotine, murdered, raped, killed, everything. Like any opposing viewpoint has to be excised from society. Otherwise, like the Nazi disease will infect everybody's brain. And then FD signifier was, I don't know if he's making a Uncle Tom joke or I don't know.
I think they're mostly pissing and moaning about Sneako and Sneako platforming.
Subscribe to
Sneako platforming Fuentes or whatever.
Subscribe.
But I hate these types of people because both of these fucking losers will never ever change a single person's mind in their entire life. Like their entire platforms and purpose for existing is literally just to preach to the choir, which is fine. Hold on, let me back up. Sorry, hold on. Wait. Hold on. I'm better than this. I got over this kind of mean shit. Hold on.
Oh yes, that's the whole irresponsible.
Let me
talking to people.
Yeah, let me rewrite that. Okay. I think that there can be an important role that you play in informing your own audience about certain topics. I think that's great and fine. I think that you can do that, and I think there's a place for that, and there's value there. That's really good. But what I don't like is those people veering out of their lane to fight with people like me, okay? I like to talk in combative audiences because I think that I can slowly change people's minds on the other side. But when I have these worthless subhuman boat anchors dragging me to the bottom of their shit-filled ocean where they just want me to preach about, oh, progressivism and diversity is our greatest strength, and that's all I should be screeching to everybody, and I should never talk to anybody with opposing point of view. I hate it. It drives me fucking crazy. Sorry. Okay, that's all I got.
Yeah. The whole idea of like, don't platform these people, don't give them a voice, don't give them oxygen. I don't know. I just don't care for it. To me, it's more interesting to hear what these people have to say and to sift through it myself. I think as a grown adult, I feel as though I have at least the critical thinking ability to be able to discern when someone's trying to be very deceptive or not. And if I don't hear them out, I can't make that kind of
for sure
prescription, or I can't understand them that way. And so, is there an argument to be made that frivolously bringing on these people and letting them ramble on about their views for an hour is probably bad? Sure, I think you'd certainly make that.
Well,
but I think if you have a counterweight to that, then at the very least, you've balanced it out to some degree.
Yeah,
but
and my issue
I
is,
would want to hear these people and why they think what they think, even if it's unedited and not interrupted. I think it's interesting for me because I'm like, oh, that's how your brain functions. That's how you came to your conclusions. But I don't know. I don't like the whole idea of like, well, these people are problematic, so we shouldn't give them any oxygen. I'm like, why?
And
these views are out there. Let's hear them.
Exactly. Those are the two big issues. That one is people need to know how to address these views, because I see way too many times. I've seen clips of Matt Walsh's documentary where he's asking questions like gender studies professors, and they don't know how to answer. And I'm like, bro, are you fucking serious? That, and two, these views are out there. There's people that believe them. There's people that talk about them. You can't just like cover your ears and go la 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 and pretend that they don't exist, because people are out there listening and they're getting indoctrinated. And it's part of your responsibility as somebody that exists out here and believes in the things you believe to be able to adequately counter these views. Like, no offense, and I'll say this a million times, and they can click me as many times as they want. Like, if Nazism or fascism is so easy to spread that like people just listening to these people on a YouTube thing or a podcast or whatever is going to make them Nazis, then fuck it. We should all just be fucking Nazis. If it's that infectious, you're not going to stop it anyway. Like, I don't believe that, though. That's wild. You should be able to push back against these ideas. We literally fucking beat Nazis in World War II, okay? Like, how you can't beat them on fucking YouTube or fucking Twitter? That's wild to me. How little confidence or faith you have in your own system of belief that you think that just by having one of these dudes speak for 20 minutes, your entire fucking audience is going to become a meme comic and, like, be radicalized, instantaneously. That shit drives me wild.
Yeah. Okay, two things. I got to respond to two things here. Didn't respond. Okay. 10 minutes. Okay, so let's do the first one. Actually, we'll do the second one first. So this is something I see a lot of people. I got a few Instagram DMs. Yo, how dare you just sit there and listen to Nick Fuentes and all this stuff? Like, guys, this wasn't a prepared thing. This is a complete surprise event. All right, if somebody would told me we're going to have a race realism debate with Nick Fuentes, probably wouldn't have showed up. Okay,
sure.
So it's important to note that like the circumstance that led to me and Jadion being there is one. Two, just because we sat there quietly didn't mean we agreed. I just let the man ramble because I didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. So how did I look stupid just being like, excuse me? Like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Okay. So those two things are different. It doesn't mean that because I was sitting there quietly that I agreed with anything this man was saying. I was just letting him go because I had nothing to rebut with. And the second thing, people had this critique of you, and so I'm gonna play devil's advocate for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes, we agree that you've probably been able to change people's minds and you've wrecked Sneako in a debate, etc., etc. But when you do up to 10 videos on this guy, or you do 10 debates with him and you keep wrecking him, so would you not argue that you are no longer doing it to inform people like his views are backwards, but you're just essentially doing it for entertainment? That would be FD Signifier's argument.
I mean, I think that there is, so this is something that I talked about before, and you brought it up as well. I don't think there is a thing as just entertainment. I think it's always playing two roles. Like when you're entertained, it's like that idea of like when someone's like, oh, it's just a joke. And it's like, well, it kind of is, but there's something else that's going on at the same time. So I mean, like, is it entertainment? I mean, ultimately, everything I do on stream really is for entertainment, right? It's not like academic or anything. But I mean, like, it's a little bit more than just entertainment, right? Because we're talking about like pretty serious issues. So, I mean, if you want to make the accusation, or if you want to make the accusation of like milking content or whatever, I mean, that's probably true to some extent as well. But like, and this is kind of like the double-edged or this is like the tightrope that every political streamer can walk on. In some ways, maximizing entertainment or maximizing like hot topics is kind of the same as maximizing your political effectiveness too. Because somebody might say, well, I think you're just covering all this red pill stuff because it's blowing up right now and it's really popular. And in one sense, I can just counter say, yeah, that's true. I am covering it because it's blowing up and it's popular. If it wasn't popular and it wasn't blowing up, I wouldn't fucking talk about it because there's no reason to talk about it, right? Like if Andrew Tate is like getting really popular and a whole bunch of people have some horrible opinions on women as a result of videos he's making, well, of course I'm going to talk about it. Like that's literally, that makes it worth talking about. You know, if there was like some weird dude that like tweeted out that he wants to like rape all women and men should be able to do that and he's getting like 2 likes, well, I'm not going to cover his shit. Nobody believes what this guy's saying. That's fucking wild. Why would I even give him, you know, the time of day? That's just dumb. But yeah, when it gets more popular, it's kind of, I think it's worth talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and not talking about these things doesn't make it go away. Not discussing these people doesn't stop this wave that's coming or all this stuff. You know, the Manosphere stuff was getting popular for quite some time without anybody really covering it. Mm-hmm. Then a bunch of people did their fucking video essays on it, still remained just as popular, if not more. You know, like there was no way to really stop this tidal wave because I think the societal issues that existed that kind of led to this movement growing existed before any of these rebuttals happened. So to me, when people say like, oh, it's promoting this stuff and making it worse, like what proof do you have of that? What proof is there that when you or somebody else covers it, that it makes the situation worse? I think that's just mental cope that people have because they can't accept the fact that they don't have control over the fact that this shit's spreading and it's getting more popular. And so they look to people and they're just going to prescribe to them like responsibility. Oh, this is your fault. This is your fault for encouraging and platforming these people. It's like, stupid, this stuff was already spreading irrespective. I think I just now have an opportunity to show to my audience or whoever it is why it's stupid and also make some money.
Yeah, people will do that where they will I'll debate somebody or I'll talk to somebody and then they'll get like really big and people like, oh, that's your fault. That person grew because of you. I was like, well, okay, hold on. Do you really know that they grew 100% because of me? Because like there are people that I have platformed that haven't grown and they just like disappeared into nothing. And then there are people that I have debated that and there are people that I haven't debated that have grown, and there are people that I have debated that have like totally disappeared. So it's like, who's to say, like, you know, I mean, you can have some effect, of course. It would be silly for me to say like there's no effect ever. That would be disingenuous. But I think it's a little bit silly to get into this hardcore thing, like where you're like, oh, you 100% are the sole reason why this guy grew, and if you would have just ignored him, they wouldn't have at all. It's like, okay, like people claim that I did that to Keffels, that I was the reason why Keffels blew up. It's like, I don't know if that's the case, man, but
I understand that people might have some effect, but to what ability we can even measure that, it's very difficult. It could also be said that by not talking about it, you make it worse because people are like, oh, they have no rebuttal to this. Nobody can counter these people because what they're saying is the truth. So if nobody rebuts them or nobody goes at them or constantly talks about like how wrong this stuff is, well, you know, if they're working so aggressively hard to spread their ideology and their ideas and nobody ever counters them, how do you ever stop that spread? No. Out of curiosity. I'm asking you, how would you stop it?
I don't think you can. And this is also kind of like my issue is that type of thinking, because this is kind of the trap that Vosh painted himself in and the ideology these people paint themselves in, is you basically put yourself in a world where you can never, ever, ever talk about like growing negative trends because you're just like irresponsibly platforming or giving attention to something. And it's like, well, I guess we don't ever talk about this now because we can't platform any of the other speakers. We can barely contend with the ideas because a lot of these guys don't even know what the ideas are because they're like, they make these horrible caricatures or straw men of these. Like, honest to God, one of the most impressive things that I can do in other people's eyes when I'm having debates with some of these red pillars, a lot of these people are shocked that I even understand their point of view. Like if I can summarize like, oh, like they believe this because of that and that and that. A lot of people on the other side will hear them, they're like, oh wow, this guy at least understands what we fucking think or feel. And that automatically puts me ahead of, and I'm not exaggerating this, but of like 98% of other left-leaning online commentators. Because if you ask them, like, what's the point of the red pill? They'll say, oh, it's because they hate women. What's the point of like race realism or America First? Oh, it's because they hate minorities. Like, no, like that's not the point. And then when you say that over and over again, and then here's the biggest problem. This is like the dare problem. And it almost happened yesterday on that podcast, or maybe it even did a little bit with some of the other people on that podcast. The problem is that when you say over and over again, well, what is Nick Fuentes? What is America First? They hate minorities. They hate minorities. So it's just all born out of hate. And then you actually meet them, or you see them interact with somebody, and you're like, well, hold on. 4 black dudes talked to Nick last night, and yeah, he was a little bit edgy, but he seemed pretty friendly. They were laughing, they were joking, you know, they were going back and forth. He didn't really seem like he hated them that much. And when they asked him, he's like, no, I don't hate black people. I just think we should all have our own places. That actually seems a little bit reasonable. Now, because you've primed their mind in one direction so hard, when they are confronted with reality and they see it's nothing like what you described, now they're not going to believe a single fucking thing you say. And that's nobody's fault but your own. It's the same that I argue like for the Breonna Taylor shit or for the Michael Brown shit or for any other thing. When you misrepresent like a BLM case and then somebody like sees the facts like, wait, what? Now that you've lost their ear completely, they're not going to trust a single fucking thing you say. And that's your fault because you don't have to be like that. Just accurately summarize their views and attack them from there. When you inaccurately summarize somebody's views, it makes me think you don't have a counter for it. That's what drives me crazy.
I think what you said about priming them negatively and then finding out that wasn't true, like, that is the basis for like how the red pill stuff got very popular. I think society was primed a certain way, and then they came to learn that life was very different, and then that made them enraged, and then they went the opposite direction.
Sure.
So I think that's how you create that kind of anti-establishment sentiment. So yeah, entirely, I do agree. You know, I don't. Noah Samson, is that the guy who like?
Yes.
Oh, no. And he does like these like deadpan jokes and always has like a deadpan voice.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I got it from the first impression. Yeah.
I don't mind FD Signify. I've watched like maybe a video. It's too long, so I just can't watch all. But I don't mind the content personally. I find it so funny because I think Jadeon brought this up to me. He talked to me about H3H3 and I watched his debate with him. And H3H3 said pretty much verbatim what like you hear Hassan and these guys say, which is, why would you platform these people? It's irresponsible. Like there's no conversation, blah, blah, blah. I wonder if these guys understand that the very reason why the red pill movement became so popular, or why a lot of these other movements become so popular, is because their issues aren't discussed. Because they don't see the things that they care about that are affecting them on a day-to-day basis being reflected in discourse. Okay? When these people feel so disenfranchised with all the discourse, which like pretty much only centered around women's issues for a very long time.
And LGBT and minority,
Which, cool, there's issues to be dealt with. It's not wrong. But when they feel ignored, how are you then going to complain that like about these people who are now speaking to them, even if it's not good? We can agree on a lot of it being bad. Even if it's not good, they're the only ones talking to their issues. So then not talking about it led to these movements being created. And then they also want you to not talk about it now that these issues are in the mainstream, because then it grows it. And then they expect anything to change. It's like, bruv, the way we got to this point was not talking about it. The way that these movements even got big was not talking about it. And now that it's big, you're like, let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
It's like, do you not see like the cognitive dissonance? Like, I feel so dumb sometimes because I'll vehemently disagree with some of the stuff the red pill say, much like yourself. And then I'll listen to the other side and they sound so stupid and unhinged. Their idea of dealing with problems is not confronting it. Whereas the red pill people will be like, you're always in control. You got depression, get out of bed. You're dealing with something, you're the one who needs to deal with it. All of it's in your power. And then the other guys are just being like, everything's systemic.
It's all systemic. It's all oppression. You can't do anything. Everybody's beautiful at every size. You're all fat or whatever. Yeah, that's why I always try to have empathy for people like, even people like Sneako. Like my audience will look at him like, oh, like he's so stupid or whatever. It's like, yeah, because you listen to me all day. That sounded really conceited. I didn't mean it that way. But like, if you're in a world where all you're listening to are like the craziest left-wing bots you can hear, like, bro, it's hard for me to not turn into a fucking Nazi, and ironically, when I listen to some of these dudes, though. Because, like, you listen to some of these guys on the left, and you're like, you guys are unhinged. You actually sound fucking insane. Like, I feel like if I were to be inundated in this media landscape for, you know, a couple weeks, and I wasn't already fully bought into, like, what your messaging was, like, I would just come out as, like, the most hateful, evil fuck person in the world. And even a lot of people on the left are starting to get sick of, like, how radical some of the, like, Me Too stuff has gotten, some of the LGBT stuff has gotten. It's like, damn, you guys need to turn it the fuck down. What is wrong with you guys?
I don't know where these things are going, and you know, even identifying as a centrist nowadays, or even someone's like center left or whatever, it's just like a cop out in people's eyes. You know? Well, there's no such thing as a center left. You're just a right winger in disguise. I'm like, all right. And last night's podcast, I think, was like a good reflection of our inability to accept that people on our team don't do everything the same way.
Sure.
You know, Like, if I were to sit down with FD Signifier and we were to talk about, a good majority of like social issues, social programs, what we want for society, what we want our government to be doing, I think there'd be a lot of overlap in terms of like what we agree on politically. But I think the way that they go about like prescriptively telling folks like what folks can't or can't be doing and what's good for the group is just so off-putting. It makes you not want to identify with the group whatsoever. And I feel like I've talked about this enough, so it's not something I want to really rehash. But me reading those tweets, I'm just like, it's crazy how all of these guys repeat the same fucking rhetoric, which is essentially don't talk. Don't platform these people. I don't know. It's interesting that they all have the exact same talking points, and it really does make them sound like bots. Yeah. And so when I hear Sneako calling them bots, more and more I'm like, I'm starting to get it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And that's always my issue.
Because they do sound like bots.
They do. Yeah, they do. And they repeat the same brainless talking points, and they don't even understand the opposition. They don't even know who they're arguing against. Like, they don't know why these people are so upset or why they're so fucking triggered over shit. And it's like, fuck. Like,
okay. Yeah. Let me pose this to you. If I'm an uncertain person, I don't know how to feel about these issues, okay? I got the red pill guy who says, I'll talk to anybody. I don't give a fuck. You could be a neo-Nazi. Don't matter. I'll talk to anyone. And then you have the other side who says, you don't need this information. These people are bad for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it automatically,
just more likely to be open to the person who wants to show you everything, quote unquote, or the person who's like, we don't talk to these people because they're bad. Don't worry, you don't need to know about them. You just need to know neo-Nazi.
Yeah, it almost sounds like even without even knowing what they think or believe or feel, like it's almost like you automatically like, yeah, I'm probably not going to go with you. Okay, you sound like you're kind of a little bit afraid of conflict, Yeah.
How about, let me put this point to you. I didn't have that strong of an opinion on Nick Fuentes. I haven't seen him much, okay? Dion didn't have much of an opinion on Nick Fuentes. We hadn't seen him much. By the end of that discussion last night, we both came away thinking like, oh yeah, this man's definitely a white supremacist. And this man is definitely bad for black folks and minorities alike and for whatever image we have for the country. How can you look at that conversation and think like we came out of it like, oh yeah, this guy's fucking awesome? Are you crazy? Like we both came away with a concrete idea that we didn't have of him before. All right. And so, yes, is some audience going to veer towards that? Sure. But they were probably already primed to fall for that kind of rhetoric to begin with. Yeah. To me, at least for me personally, like now I have a clear idea of who he is. And so I know how to move accordingly now. But I would not have trusted other people's opinions of him. Because let me tell you, if other people trusted other folks' like hearsay opinion about me, they would probably view me as a fucking antichrist. Because there's people out there who view me that way. And so I don't put too much stake stake into what other people try to tell me about other folks. The same way when you were going on Fresh and Fit, you could pull out the DMs. I literally told you nothing about them other than you should go on the podcast. Is that true?
Yeah.
Why did I say that? Because I'm like, you should make your own.
Draw your own opinion.
That's it. So I don't know. To me, the podcast last night did not make me more like adjacent to white supremacy or more like down with it. Nor did my audience members come away thinking like, you know what, man, I'm down with being erased as a black person. Like, I don't think that's what happened. But I think these guys disagree and they think we contributed to harm. So what are you going to do from here on out to be better? I'm asking you.
What do we do in terms of like platforming people or in terms of like reaching out to people left or right? Which ones?
Well, for your irresponsible actions last night, engaging with Sneako for the 11th time, and also helping to platform Nick onto an even platform.
I mean, I like platforming where I'm at. I think that if you believe strongly enough in your ideas, you should be able to defend them. And if you can't, then get the fuck out or change your mind on shit. If you feel that unconfident about whatever you're preaching, that you feel like it can't stand up to any other person, then just leave. Then either you have a shit ideology or you're not the person to defend it. And then let the people that can do it and stay the fuck out of our way. That's what I would say. But
would you ever have a debate with either of those? Oh, I think you did one with Samson, right?
They'll never talk to me though, because I'm a Nazi to them. Unironically, that neither of those characters.
You didn't debate Samson?
No, he will never. Those people never talk to me. No.
Really? I thought you debated him for some reason.
Well, fuck. Did I talk to him years ago? I talked to him a long time ago. Does anybody know? Actually, somebody can tell me.
Oh no, you talked to the other guy on TikTok who said like fat phobia is like as bad as racism or whatever. Who's the TikTok nerd? Political's what's his name? He's kind of like he looks like Samson, but without a mustache and a little bit chubbier.
I'm not sure now. Oh, Mr. Beard.
Oh yeah. The guy who has no what was his take? Like your words are violence or some shit like that.
All right, some wild, just dumb shit.
Yeah, when you use the word retard, it was like oppressive, something like
Something
that,
like
right?
that, yeah.
Okay, so it was him you talked to. It wasn't Samson. You don't think Samson would ever be down to talk to you, or FD Signify either?
If either of them wants to, I would. FD won't. He literally has me blocked on Twitter.
Okay.
The Samson guy, man, if he, I don't know, I could tweet at him. Oh,
He did give you a shout out though. He said that you had a debate with Sneako 10 times and you wrecked him every time. So I mean,
no, that wasn't a shout out. What was the end of that tweet?
I think he might have said something like, so
He's
this isn't about changing minds, this is about entertainment.
Exactly. So fuck him.
Okay.
No, that wasn't a compliment. That was a backhanded insult.
Okay. I mean, like, he still acknowledged the fact that you wrecked him. I'm not gonna lie. If that was me, I'm like, I did destroy that motherfucker. You know?
Yeah, but they view that whole action as negative. They're like, wow, you wrecked him, so you got views on your YouTube. Congratulations, you're making money off the backs of the suffering of like all the people that are being.
That's why you got to develop some selective hearing or reading. You know what I mean? Just take the parts that you like and ignore the rest. And be like, I am that dude. You know what I'm saying? You could have took that moment, went in the mirror, flexed a little bit, like, hey, Sneako, I sunned you. You could have done that. Instead, you're just looking at the negatives. You feel?
Listen, dude, just because I have a woman's name doesn't mean I can selectively hear like a woman, okay? So slow down.
Yo, you know what? Someone pulled this up yesterday. They're like, look at these guys not laughing at Destiny's N-word joke, but they laughed at Nick Fuentes. And you know what I realized? When you do a joke, you abandon your joke because you know it's fucking problematic. So before anybody can voice any outrage, you abandon.
Well, yeah, if something's not going over, you just move on to the next thing.
No, but you don't even give it a chance to sit. You know, you gotta commit
That's
to
some
you have
shit,
to commit to the joke. No, you have to commit to it. This is why I'm saying this. Okay, the reason why Nick does so well with that kind of racist humor, okay, and why it's like so obscene is because not only does he not flinch, but he stares you in the eyes. He's like, I love my black people, and there's such an unhinged look in his face, like he's committed 150%. In your case, you will give the joke, and before the joke even has a second to breathe, you're already laughing. Like, I'm just kidding. Let it sit. Let him get a little uncomfortable before you bring him back.
Yeah, I will. Okay. I'll remember this. Okay. We're going to drop some big ones next time. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Let the pause set in and then break it. Why? Because the pause gives a sense for tension. Okay. And then boom, you hit him with the like, nah, we good. Don't worry. You still gonna find me.
All right. Got it. I'm doing this on an in-person debate.
If you don't believe me, here.
I'm doing it. It's too late. I'm going to try it. I believe you. Okay.
I want you guys to do like a compilation of him doing these kind of edgy jokes and look at his reaction immediately after he says the joke. Just do a compilation. You'll notice what I'm talking about. All right. So let it hang. You know what I'm saying? Let your balls hang.
Okay, I'm on it, dude. You know what's kind of like sad / funny is there are like there's a nugget of truth there where I think for a lot of these people, if they met the right person, it would radically change their worldview.
Who's these people?
Like racist people.
Okay. Yes.
I'm really embarrassed to say it, but like I grew up in Nebraska, and I was never racist. But if you would have ever asked me, and I might have even said this out loud to like friends or whatever, like I would always say like I could never date a black girl. It's just like that concept would just be wild to me. And it wasn't until I started coming down to Miami more, and then actually like meeting black women, I was like, oh yeah, of course I could do this. This is so stupid. And I've had that experience like 2 or 3 times in my life where there are certain times I thought that about trans people before too. And then I'll start talking to certain people and I'll be like, oh yeah, this person's really cool. Like the fact that they're whatever is like, it takes a huge backseat to who it is. And I only need like 1 or 2 experiences. Like, oh yeah. And I try to keep that in mind now when I'm dealing with people. If I think negatively about a person or whatever, it's like, oh, you know, I feel like I could, but if I meet a person, you know, it feels different. So I feel like for a lot of people, just being introduced to people or having interactions with people that they think they're like fundamentally incompatible with is a really eye-opening experience, you know? I
definitely agree. Take, for example, this younger generation. I think because they live so terminally, even folks who are living in Nebraska or like more rural areas, because they're constantly exposed to people from different communities or like admire folks from different communities, it's perfectly normal. Not only is it normal, it's like really encouraged. Their perception of race is like completely different than your generation of, right? And so I think that what you said in regards to like people just knowing folks from different communities definitely helps a lot, because I feel like at least me growing up especially, it was like very racially segregated. Black folks stay with black folks, white folks stay with white folks. Even though we went to the same school, like if you look at the social circles, everyone kind of stayed.
Yeah, or the lunch tables,
Right, and I think with these younger folks, even if they are in a mostly like whitely dominated area, you watch the way that they consume media online that they're into, and it's very evident to me that they view race drastically different than we do. It doesn't appear that way to everyone because I think racism online is just much more readily available and much more discussed all the time. So it seems like the issue is more pressing. But if I were to poll most of the young people on their views and do the same poll with folks like my generation and above, I think the young folks would have a much more favorable view of like interracial marriage, a lot of like racial issues, systemic racism, all this stuff. They'd be much more like open to agreeing and saying it's real than people from my generation.
Yeah,
Do you
for
agree
sure.
or disagree?
Yeah, for sure, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
If they're an online person, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's I would have to agree with your statement.